Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Cris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Hey everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. As he is every day, that is Nick Wright. How are you?
Good to see you guys. What a show we have planned today. I cannot wait. I can't wait for today's show. I'm so excited. It's 6:30 in the morning. Excited it's Wild Card Weekend.
I'm so glad that I survived the storm. The storm actually ate me and then spit me out this morning. And I'm just going to tell America, if I had another career choice, this morning would have been...
Cece was doing the math. Cece was calculating expenses, lifespan, and doing the math on...
Well, we here in New York just got
you.
bombarded by Mother Nature last night. We got,
I thought
8
it was
inches,
awesome.
6 inches.
New York City in the snow's awesome, though. The streets look great. No one's on the subway.
The next day, you got some issues in New York City.
Absolutely.
But anyway, let's start with a different storm of sorts. The big story in the NFL that has nothing to do with the playoffs or snow, what could signal a shattered relationship between Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and Robert Kraft. Long story short, which is never my mantra, Belichick wanted no part, apparently, of trading Jimmy Garoppolo and was ready to make the switch as soon as he thought Jimmy G was up and running and better than Brady. Brady reportedly saw Garoppolo as a threat and as a result convinced owner Robert Kraft to mandate the trade. Now, the whole thing leaving Belichick, quote, furious and demoralized. So that is the short version. For the long version, you can check out the story by ESPN's Seth Wickersham. But, CC, let's start with you. What does that mean based on everything you've read so far and what you're hearing for the future of the New England Patriots?
Well, first things first, I'm not surprised by the situation. People... They would like to think that Bill Belichick is different than the guy that's at the podium. Now, we know that that is part shtick, but as a human being, now, I would call myself to have known some of the greatest coaches that have ever coached this game, and Bill Belichick is as different than any of those coaches that I've ever been associated with or know. Even the guy who mentored him, Bill Parcells. Now, Bill Parcells... all these coaches, take this the right way, are some kind of crazy. Just like all the football players playing in the NFL are some kind of crazy. But his type of craziness has to do with control, and also I believe that he loves to control the narrative as far as the news. So to me, this means he's going to control how New England's run. He runs the 53-man roster. Oh, excuse me. No, he doesn't. He runs the 52-man roster. Because the relationship with Robert Kraft supersedes Bill Belichick's authority on that roster. And as you can see with some of the reports, which I knew, the reason why Tom Brady, and I had been telling Nick this, why he's been adamant he's going to play 4 or 5 more years, he was sending the message to Belichick to let you can't get rid of me. And he was also sending the message as far as his TB12, all this stuff, this training stuff, that I'm going to keep playing. And the only way I'm not going to keep playing is if Bill Belichick forces me out. But he can't force him out because the relationship with Mr. Kraft and Tom Brady. Mr. Kraft wants Tom Brady to retire as a Patriot. He does not want to see him do the Joe Montana or some of the other greats that we have seen in sport.
And Cece, just to explain to the audience, the relationship between Mr. Kraft and Brady, between Robert Kraft and Brady, is not your typical owner-player relationship. It's not even your typical owner-legend relationship. How did you describe the relationship to me?
A father-son. Okay. And there's very seldom do you see accomplished people who have great relationships with their kids, and their kids are very successful, that they verbally, publicly adopt people into the family.
Right.
And when he says, and him and I had a bunch of conversation when we were in Israel. And he talked about his commitment
Robert
to winning.
Kraft, right?
Yes, and how much he loved Tom Brady and so many things about. We talked about Brady so much, we were getting on the bus. He just called him. He FaceTimed him. And he was like, hey, man, Tom, I got something for you. And he's like, hey, what is it? And he's like, hey, it's Cris Carter. And Tom said, and it was funny, man, they finally got me a big receiver. I've been trying to tell them I don't like throwing to these small guys. And just the relationship and the conversation ended with, and I thought, to me, it meant so much. Mr. Kraft told Tom he loved him. And Tom told him back, man, I love you. And they got off the phone, and I just took that and sealed that. It's like, wow, that right there, that's going to be a conflict if Belichick continues to operate the way he operates.
So now some context for this very long and great, I don't know Seth Wickersham, but he has written some monsters in the last 18 months. So I want to give him a ton of credit. He's a great investigative reporter. So some context for why would the Brady-Kraft relationship cause some issues? Well, let's talk about the Brady-Belichick relationship. According to this story, Tom Brady has not once this year been awarded Patriot of the Week. That might sound petty, CC.
Next week, he's going to win MVP of the NFL.
Wait, who gives out
Belichick. Belichick gives out Patriot of the Week.
And the coaching staff.
The coaching staff.
They take the input of the coaching staff.
Every week. All right, so there's that. Belichick made Brady's, not just his trainer, the man Brady made godfather to one of his kids, persona non grata at the facility. So that's going on. Now let's talk about Belichick's relationship with Garoppolo. Belichick was already talking about the things, if I may say, that I was talking about before the year, which is Brady's 40 years old. We know the track record of this.
Right.
What is the succession plan? And we think Garoppolo can be a star. Talked about Garoppolo, that he had the ability to be a top 10 player in the league. So Brady's relationship with Garoppolo, according to this report, Brady would not mentor Garoppolo. Brady had a set.
Which shouldn't be surprising.
Right. Well, I mean,
people see what they want to see, but in an NFL locker room, typical veterans are not grooming a guy to take their job. What I did for Randy Moss is not the norm.
Okay, but fair enough. I think people. You said you weren't surprised, CC? I think most people are surprised by that because of how Brady is presented publicly and how we think of it. Even if it is the norm, CC, I'm just telling you, I think how the fans view it. How about this? After Garoppolo got hurt last year, he sets up an appointment with Brady's trainer at TB12. He goes there. No one's there. Door's locked. Appointment canceled without notice on him. He's confused by it. He has to wait 2 weeks to go see the guy. So that's going on. You then bring up that CC, as CC mentioned, Belichick always wants full control of the roster. And according to this report, Robert Kraft had a meeting with Bill Belichick right before the trade deadline. A meeting that was scheduled to go X amount of hours, went 3X amount of hours to where it threw off Belichick's entire day. They then the mandate is you have to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Belichick leaves it furious and demoralized, trades him to a place that he thinks is best for Garoppolo, not necessarily best for the Patriots, not necessarily best for the future. When Belichick
he did Garoppolo a solid.
Did him a solid.
Called the guy that he knows, and text him and said, "Call me." Now just imagine that. You get a text from Bill Belichick right before the trade deadline, say, "Call me."
And so now you have a scenario, and I want to give one of our teammates, Colin Cowherd, credit because he broached this publicly earlier than many people were about a month ago, where we on this show said, man, this doesn't make sense. Why do you trade Jacoby Brissett for essentially nothing? When if you know you might trade Garoppolo, why do you not have, you went from having the best quarterback situation in football, according to Bill Belichick, to one guy and he's a 40-year-old. Well, now, okay, so if Belichick feels like he's been meddled with, and he feels like I've built this, and now power's being removed from me. Okay, how about this? How about the nice little project quarterback, Jacoby Brissett? He's gone. The future star quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's gone. Offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, I'm going to do everything I can to get him a job. Defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, I'm going to do everything I can to get him a job. And then maybe I walk out as well. And what you're left with in New England is Kraft and a 41-year-old quarterback in Tom Brady. That, to me, looks like where this is headed, which is jarring. But based on the story, it's hard for me, CC, to draw any other conclusion.
I don't think that will happen. I don't think Belichick's going to leave. People, as far as their career, they always don't appropriate the same thing they do to do their job that they do in pro sports. Bill Belichick is the absolute best in his profession. Why would he quit doing something that he's great at? Like, what would he do next? Like, what's his encore? What would he do? Go to another team?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, well, let me tell you something. Do you know how long it would take for him to get his video people to be able to run the video the way he wants to? All the coaches, because if he does this, if he has Josh McDaniel and Patricia, if they get head coaching jobs, they're taking part of the staff with them. Belichick does not have time. In 2000, he was hired as the Jets coach, right? He quit. He don't have 17 years to be able to get all the intel, to train all the staff. There are not enough Belichick disciples for him to go to another organization. And for you guys to think that he would just uproot and start over, he doesn't trust that many people to be able to start his program new somewhere else.
Is it off the table that maybe this is it? Maybe they win a championship and he's done a ton of work and and
so what's he going to do after the championship?
Well, I mean, he's not going to coach forever. This could be it. He's had a very successful career. He has a ton of money.
But why would he walk away, though? You know what rich people do? They want more money. You know what people who are successful, what they do? They want more success. Kraft told me they were addicted to winning trophies. Now, where else can Belichick go that he can dictate the way he is dictated in the AFC, in the AFC East with the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Bills?
And it took time, obviously, for him to get to that point and for the AFC to basically crumble, the AFC East to crumble the way it did. But now if Patricia leaves and if Daniels leaves, and they have no real substantial backup quarterback besides Hoyer, what are you left with if he decides to stay?
If he decides to quit, then his legacy was only with Tom Brady. All right? Bill Belichick wants to have a legacy without – that's what he was preparing for. He was preparing for that. So now you guys are saying, oh, I didn't get my way. Now he's just going to take his ball and go home and quit?
No,
go ahead.
You are going to have Tom Brady here. So he's still going to – it's not like he's going to be here without Tom Brady.
No, you didn't listen to me. I said he wanted to create a legacy without Brady.
Right.
Right now, he doesn't get all the credit now.
But Jenna's point is the only way for him to do that, if Brady does want to play for another 3 or 4 years, is to go somewhere
else. But there's not – you don't have the staffing, and he doesn't have the time. All right? I don't know if you guys looked at his age, but he don't have
4 years old.
He don't have time to do all that. Now, you guys act like there's Belichick disciples everywhere, and anyone can coach Belichick's way. No, that's not the case. Belichick is that way. Nick Saban is that way. It's hard to coach for these guys.
CC, I'm not trying to act like anything. What I am trying to do is recognize that the facts on the ground have changed to a degree, and we'd be foolish not to recognize them. That Belichick had a succession plan in place. His owner meddled with it. And if I may read a quote from the article, Belichick has always subscribed to the philosophy that it's time to go once an owner gets involved in football decisions, left the impression with some friends that the current dynamic was unsustainable. Like, that's not my words. That's not me. And I understand that nothing would be as ideal as Belichick being able to keep running the program the way he sees fit. If that's no longer the case, I think it would be foolish to not acknowledge the possibility.
He is running the program. Besides that one decision, he's making every day. Did you see the team yesterday? Practice in the snow? Who do you think that was?
Of course
you think that was Kraft?
But
that's control. That's what yesterday was. To let the players know and the front office, I run this team. I can't practice in the snow, but I'm going to make y'all go out here anyway to let you know that I'm the one guy that's calling the shots. And he is. He's calling all the shots except Tom Brady.
Right, which some would say, could argue, is the biggest shot right now, is who their quarterback is going to be going into.
Oh, you know something? I'm sentenced with Tom Brady for another couple of years. Oh, shucks, man. I might have to deal with that.
All right, let's get back to the big story in the NFL that's got nothing to do with the playoffs. What could signal a shattered relationship between Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and Robert Kraft.
Shattered.
Long story, you hear the music? It's very soap opera. Long story short, which is never my mantra, Belichick wanted no part of trading Jimmy Garoppolo and was ready to make the switch as soon as he thought Jimmy G was up and running, and better, frankly, than Brady. Brady reportedly saw Garoppolo as a threat, and as a result, convinced owner Robert Kraft to mandate the trade. Now, the whole thing leaving Bill Belichick, quote, furious and demoralized. All right, so that's the short version. For the long version, you can check out the story by ESPN's Seth Wickersham. But, CeCe, what is your reaction to Kraft siding with Brady over Belichick in this instance?
I don't think it's siding with Brady over Belichick. I think that they're making a bunch of decisions that they had to make. Tom Brady wants to continue playing football. So what other choice does Tom Brady have? I've been trying to tell you guys all along, if Tom wants to play, there's nothing they can do about it. What are they going to do, release him? As long as Tom is showing that he's at an elite level, they were going to have a hard time getting rid of him. Now, Mr. Kraft, looks at Tom as one of his sons. Mr. Kraft, the only reason why he's got the team now is to win championships. He personally told me that. So their chances of winning championships with Tom Brady go way up. Tom has been so outspoken, not about anything but his fitness, TB12, and he wants to play another 3 to 5 years. So Jimmy Garoppolo at the end of his contract, I mean, the Patriots tried to offer him a contract extension. He didn't accept. They tried to trade him to Cleveland in the offseason, which they didn't do because of a couple different reasons. Number one, Belichick didn't want to trade him. Number two, Jimmy wouldn't sign a contract extension with Cleveland. So that removed Cleveland from being a viable option for where he was to go. So this was a tough decision that they had to make. I don't think it's just the owner siding with Tom over Belichick. It was a difficult decision. I believe that it won't hurt their relationship going forward. I believe that
whose relationship?
It won't hurt Belichick's relationship with Kraft.
Okay.
It won't hurt Tom's relationship with Belichick. Tom knows that Belichick is the coach. They had to make a decision this year because they couldn't lose Jimmy Garoppolo for no compensation. They could not allow him to be on the roster at the end of this season and him not sign. So it's not maybe the way people would want it to be, but as they go forward, all right, Bill Belichick is running this team. He just didn't have complete control of that roster spot that Tom Brady has.
And when you're a control freak, it's tough to not have complete control over something as critical as trading away a guy that you spent a second-round pick on, a guy that you are clearly very bullish about his future, and a guy that plays the most important position in sports. Like, this isn't just random conjecture now. We now have things that are we now have a piece of information that validates a lot of curious things. I didn't understand why the Pats traded Garoppolo when they did and for the compensation they did. We now know. It's because the owner told Bill Belichick answers to one person in that organization, and that person had an extended closed-door meeting with him where at the end of it, he said, you got to trade the guy. We got 2 days of the trade deadline. Make it happen. We didn't know why all of a sudden, after years of Tom Brady's personal trainer, Guerrero, who's also the godfather to his kids, having an office in the stadium, treating a bunch of the players in the stadium, that all of a sudden Belichick severed that relationship and made it very clear to everyone he doesn't work for the team.
The reason he severed it is, if you read into the article, the reason he severed that relationship was because a lot of the players were coming to him reportedly in this article saying, we don't know when we need issues or we need help or we need physical training, do we go to our staff or do we go to Guerrero? And he was tired of hearing about their confusion as to where to go.
Right.
So he thought the best thing for the team would be to move him on.
Okay, yes, that was
Which
part
is
of it.
obviously a different rationale than I want to hurt Tom Brady or I'm angry at Tom Brady.
Okay, I'm sure what you're saying.
Why did they give him an office then?
No, it was all
Bill
working.
Belichick would have to approve to have someone else on the staff to have access to the building.
Right.
So Bill Belichick approved of the guy being there. But something happened.
Something happened. And
yes.
one of the things that happened was when Garoppolo got hurt last year, he has a scheduled appointment with Guerrero, and Guerrero doesn't show up. And Garoppolo's like, what the hell's going on? He has to wait 2 weeks for it.
What if Belichick questioned if the guy was legitimate? Because Edelman had turned his life over. He blew out his knee. Hightower was working the same system. He ended up hurt. Gronk was saying he was doing the TB12, and he ended up hurt.
Listen, if Belichick gave him the office knowing this was a guy who'd been fined by the FTC, claiming could possibly be able to kind of cure your cancer. So all of a sudden, guys getting hurt, he knew this guy was a questionable character to begin with, but Brady loved him. There's other things that are noteworthy. It might seem petty, but the fact that the guy that's going to win the league MVP hasn't won a single Patriot of the week. He's won AFC Player of the Month. He's won AFC Player of the... He's been considered by the league the best player in his conference for a month, for a week.
A lot of times the coach doesn't give it to the best player because he's trying to send a message to other players. If a guy has 120... If Brandon Cook has 140 yards, he's not the MVP of the game. Tom Brady is. But I need to give it to Cooks for his overall confidence. And I don't know that the star player. Why? Because Denny Green, we used to talk about this all the time. I used to go to him, be like, man, I thought I should have been the player of the game. He was like, no, I'm doing it to try to help build some confidence in the other guys.
Right.
So that happens.
I know it happens, but I also know that for guys, even selfless guys, great players such as yourself, it can at least temporarily rub you the wrong way. Go ahead.
It doesn't rub you in a way that's going to affect you doing your job.
Okay, I totally agree that this story will have no impact on whether or not the Patriots go to the Super Bowl this year. But the things in this story, to me, absolutely could have impact about who's around next year. And this is not just random conjecture. I said at the beginning of the year, I was worried about a 40-year-old quarterback. I said at the beginning of the year, I think there's a reason they didn't trade Jimmy Garoppolo because Belichick's worried about a 40-year-old quarterback. Guess what? This very well-reported story says all of those things were true.
Any coach with common sense would be worried about a 40-year-old quarterback.
And those coaches that are worried about that wouldn't trade away the guy at the deadline unless they're forced to.
Newsflash, Nick, I learned this from you. Everybody's got a boss.
Everybody's got a boss.
Now, just because you got 5 Super Bowls, you still got a boss.
100% agree.
Who's a billionaire.
Right. And when you are Bill Belichick, and you are much like when we discussed with LeBron James, if you were to be a free agent, you would have every team in the league hit you up and say, what can we do for you? That, to me, does open the realm of possibilities there.
What is Bill Belichick's contract? What is his contract status?
Nobody knows.
Nobody
knows.
So would he be available for that LeBron-type comparison? We don't even know. So that right there is a huge reach. Because we don't know. We don't know what his contract. We don't know if he owns part of the team. We don't even know how much money he makes.
That part, you are 100% correct. There is no contract in sports that's more opaque than what Belichick makes, what his actual title is. That I will concede that point. But this is not opaque. Belichick, having always subscribed to the philosophy that it's time to go, once an owner gets involved in football decisions, left the impression with friends that the current dynamic was unsustainable. Now, maybe a championship fixes that. Maybe that was just a rash, emotional thing. Maybe he looks at the landscape and says, even if this isn't great, it's better than anything out there. But prior to this year and this article, to me, it was not on the board that Bill Belichick's not with the New England Patriots next year. Now it's at least something you have to acknowledge as a possibility.
Go ahead.
It was also, too, him and Roger Goodell were adverse adversaries.
Yeah.
It seems like they're together now. So it seems like if he can get over that, I'm sure he can get over the point of trading Garoppolo. Because what Goodell did to Belichick, the organization, and the Patriots, and their legacy, I think it's far more damaging than, hey, you know something, Bill? I think you need to trade Jimmy Garoppolo.
If people don't know what Cris is referring to, in the article it says that just this last week he met with Goodell and they buried that.
Moving on to the NFL playoffs, which get underway this weekend. The Panthers and Saints, one of 4 games on the schedule. Happens to be Sunday, happens to be on Fox, in case you were wondering when and where. 2 star quarterbacks leading their teams, Drew Brees and Cam Newton. Brees with a whole host of weapons in his arsenal. Some he throws to, others he hands off to. On the other side, most of Cam's arsenal is Cam himself. And when he's at his best, there aren't many better. You just never know when he's going to be at his best. That's the problem. But don't stress, Panther fans, because your QB isn't stressed at all. Take a listen.
What can't happen is the false kind of bravado or the indications of a playoff game. It's still football, you know. I haven't played a game yet that I didn't want to win, and this game isn't any different.
So you see, I'm not really sure what he's talking about, so I'm going to ask
All right, so bring in your resident brother interpreter. This is what Cam was trying to say. Wednesday, I said that this is the time where football is, what word did he use there?
Pressure. You tried to say pressure bus.
Oh, this is the real football. Yeah, this is the real football, and pressure does 2 things. But he didn't tell us the 2 things that they did do.
Moved on.
Yeah, sometimes you got to be careful as the team spokesman.
Okay.
That's one thing that Denny Green told me. Be careful. Repeat what the coaches are saying. Don't voice out loud what you're actually thinking. And sometimes Cam gets his little thoughts and everything a little crossed up.
All right, well,
Cam better be concerned about being consistent. I know we have been on this, but, and the reason why is you're not playing against the opposition's quarterback, but you do need to take notice who Drew Brees is. And one of the things that Nick has pointed out in this tournament that we have, where the 1 and the 2 seed in the NFC, they have backup quarterbacks. So you need to look at the 3, the 4, the 5, all these teams can make it to the Super Bowl. And when you look at Drew Brees being opposite of Cam Newton, I think there is no worse matchup for the Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton, not only because New Orleans has been more successful than any other team this year when they played them twice. They're scoring 14 more points than Carolina is normally giving up. And Drew Brees' overall playoff, when he is in the playoff, he's played amazing. I think he's the 4th-ranked quarterback in NFL as far as passing rate in NFL history, behind Bart Starr, Kurt Warner, Matt Ryan, and then Drew Brees. So for me, Cam Newton better get his stuff. Forget what you're saying in the press conference, because Drew Brees, even though he's not playing against him, has been so productive in the playoffs and in the 2 wins that they had this year going against the Panthers.
So on the actual X's and O's of it, since Friday before the game, I'm going to dive into it at least a little bit.
Go ahead, X's and O's.
Thank you. Appreciate that, CC. Carson Wentz, when he was going to win the MVP, it was because, most notably, what he did on 3rd down. He was dynamic on 3rd down. The Eagles didn't have to worry about 3rd downs because, you know what, 3rd and 11, we can deal with it. Cam's been the opposite of that this year. Out of 38 qualifying quarterbacks, he's 37th in the league, 3rd down passer rating. So what does that mean to me? It means we always talk about how 3rd down is the most important down. For the Carolina Panthers in this game, 2nd down might be the most important down. Picking up 1st downs early in the chains, because once what we've seen this year, when the Panthers are in 3rd in a passing 3rd situation where Cam doesn't have the threat of picking up the 1st down with his legs, they have not been successful. Now we could do a whole deep dive into why that is, footwork, lack of consistency. But the reality is, wild card weekend doesn't matter the whys, it matters the hows. How can they be successful against a team they haven't been successful against? And that is, I would imagine, actually throwing the ball on 1st down, so you're not in a 2nd and long that turns into a 3rd and long. And you're right, CC. Cam's going to have to be good because of who the other quarterback is. Because they know the other team's going to score points. And by the way, Drew Brees has the luxury that Cam doesn't. Drew could be a little off, and the Saints could still score points. Because of those 2 running backs, Cam's going to have to play one of his better games all year.
If the Saints play their absolute best, let's just stick on offense. If the Saints play their best and those 2 guys are running the ball and Drew is on top of his game and Cam comes out and plays his best, how do you like these 2 teams as far as offense goes?
New Orleans, because they have more firepower. New Orleans at their best, Nick likes to play this game. At their best versus their best, you know who wins. New Orleans does. They're playing at home. They have more weapons. And if they play at their best, that means that Kamar and Ingram, they probably have between them 240 yards. You know, so if that happens, they've eaten up a lot of clock.
So this comes down to defense.
Well, Thomas Davis, if both offenses are clicking, then the only chance the Panthers has is if Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly make big plays. If the defensive line can get to Drew Brees and force a turnover. I do want to add one note about Cam in the playoffs. The memory all of us have is the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl, the particular memory of the Super Bowl not diving on the fumble, of Von Miller wreaking havoc the whole game. He was bad in that Super Bowl.
My memory of the Super Bowl happens to be that awful press conference afterwards.
Okay.
It wasn't a fumble.
Okay, fair enough. But if you're talking about the actual game, Cam was bad in that football game. We should remind people, in the 2 games prior, the 2 NFC playoff games against outstanding defenses, Seattle and Arizona, Cam was extraordinary. So Cam's most recent playoff memory is a bad one, but right thereafter, he was great. He's going to have to be the Seattle or Arizona Cam in this game for the Panthers.
AFC wildcard game, the Titans and Chiefs both had a hard time just getting to the playoffs. Kansas City left for dead about a month ago after losing 6 of 7 games. Then they turned things around with a 4-game win streak. And the Titans, they snuck in as the 6th seed despite going just 9-7. Somebody has to win this one, though, CC. So which team do you think that might be?
Kansas City, let's not forget, is one of the toughest places to play, and let alone in the regular season, in the postseason. Do you think Marcus Mariota can go into Kansas City and be able to win against? I don't think so. And then also, you mentioned the 4-game win streak. Just a little side note, people haven't mentioned much about it. In those 4 weeks, Andy Reid, you know what he did? Gave up the play caller, allowed someone else to call the plays. Offense has been, the big play has been back. The creativity, a little bit different. It's going to be hard for Tennessee to find out, okay, which team are we going to see? The last 4 weeks, a very exciting team, looked a lot like the team we saw the first 4 weeks of the season. I like KC.
I like KC as well. The other distinction is, in addition to Andy Reid giving up the play calling, the Chiefs in the last month of the season did something they were doing consistently in the first month of the season, CC, and that is give the ball to Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, take out Week 17, where they didn't need the game. He had one carry, went for a 35-yard touchdown. So throw that one out. The 3 games prior to Week 17, averaged 26 carries a game, 120 yards per game, almost 5 yards per carry. Like, the Chiefs' best offensive player, most consistent offensive player is their rookie running back. Now, their most dynamic player is Tyreek Hill, but I think if you run the ball on Tennessee in a home playoff game and say, hey, Marcus Mariota, you're going to have to make huge plays to beat us. I don't love the Chiefs' defense, but in a home playoff game against Mariota, who's been bad this year, I like their chances.
And Tennessee is without DeMarco Murray, which is going to hurt them and him and Henry running the ball. That attack can be dangerous. That will be absent.
Go ahead, Jenna. Sorry.
No.
I was just going to say, the Titans have turned the ball over 13 straight games. If they're going to have any chance to go into Arrowhead and win the game as a 9-point underdog, they have to play a clean football game, because one thing the Chiefs do better than any team in the league is not turn the ball over.
It's really nice to hear you rooting for the Chiefs again. You did it maybe
I always
game 1.
Root for them.
You took like 13 games off.
I just know they're going to break my heart. That's where I'm
from. I know
from.
You have more enthusiasm talking about Kansas City than you do Golden State.
I know.
You need to balance that out there, bro.
All right, let's move on.
I just try to be honest with the audience, CC.
Let's move on to the Falcons and the Rams. It's Matty Ice versus Jared Goff.
Sometimes you have to lie to the people.
Goff needs a nickname. Jimmy Kimmel suggested a couple nicknames on the show. 2 of them, David Hasselhoff.
That's a terrible one.
Turn your head and Goff.
That's a terrible one.
Well, then he needs a nickname, guys.
Who said that?
Because we call him Matty Ice, so we just thought going up against. Okay.
Well, all right, as you were.
I'm not sure for my intro. Falcons got hot late, winning 6 of their last 8 to sneak into the postseason, but they've got experience on their side. The Rams, they won pretty consistently throughout the season, but the last time they made the playoffs, head coach Sean McVay was 18, and David Hasselhoff was 10.
All right, you brought it all together.
Yep, thank you. I tend to. McVay knows this is a big opportunity for his club. Take a listen.
To be in games like this is a great opportunity where you're the only game on a Saturday night in the Coliseum, and it's certainly something that we embrace. And we talk about seizing the moment, but we know it's going to be a great challenge against the defending NFC champs.
We're familiar with some of what they do. I'm sure they're familiar with some of what we do. It's going to be, a good test and a good battle for us. And, when we get our chances as players, we got to make plays.
All right, let's break this one down. What do you think the key is to this matchup between these two teams?
Oh, Jenna, that's an awful question. Why you want to ask me that question, Jenna? Why you want?
You got to tell her you're messing with her.
Yeah, I would.
Right before we went to this, I said I'm going to ask you about the key to the game. He goes, that's a great question. Great question, Jenna.
Just messing with you. Go ahead, CC.
People need to know. I mean,
what do they
it's
need
a
to
good
know?
question. This is the key to the game. We might be watching the Atlanta Falcons, but we might be watching them playing in Rams uniform. What do you mean, Chris? I think the 2017 Rams could be the version of the Atlanta Falcons that we saw last year that went to the Super Bowl. If you look at where Atlanta was midseason last year, the run they went on the last 6-8 games, including the playoffs, if you look at the personnel, the story of the Rams, why couldn't they duplicate, given that Wentz is out, Vikings don't have a starter, why couldn't they do it? I mean, they've had the type of regular season. They've had some monumental wins. They haven't shown the lack of football maturity to the young team with the youngest coach that we've ever seen in the National Football League. So why couldn't they do it?
They're the highest scoring team like the Falcons were last year. They have a balanced passing and rushing attack like the Falcons did last year.
So for me, last team I ever played on that was like this, man, we only didn't score 28 points twice. So the key to the game is scoring, and especially early. If they can get 10 points in the first quarter, because it puts so much pressure on Atlanta. Atlanta's last playoff game, they have not forgotten. And if you can put them in a chase mode, this defense is not as good playing catch up. And the pressure, there's more pressure on the Falcons to try to redeem from the Super Bowl hangover than it is for Jared Goff in his second season in his first playoff game, Sean McVay in his first playoff game. The Coliseum will be popping on Sunday. The pressure is on the Falcons. And if the Rams can get off to a fast start, being an explosive team that they are, they could blow Atlanta out in this game.
Go ahead, Jenna.
Well, I was just going to ask a sort of a follow-up question. Is it off the table then that the Falcons, who really the only difference between this year and last year is their offensive coordinator, who's off making Jimmy Garoppolo look amazing, but if it's the same group of guys, is it off the table that they're suddenly going to find out, rediscover what they had last year and all of a sudden start putting up the big numbers?
No, they're not going to do that because their offensive line is not as good. And Matty Ice does not have the ability in this system to go to the third, fourth, and fifth option. That's what we see. Freeman's stats, they didn't suffer as much. Julio's stats didn't suffer. But when you look at the receiver number 2, Sanu, his numbers did suffer. Okay. Coleman, the running back, his numbers suffered. And that offensive line, we don't talk about it. Their offensive line has not been good, and all we do is criticize Matty Ice, right. But the line has been poor.
I like the Rams a lot in this game. I like the Rams a lot on their side of the bracket. And one of the reasons is a guy, not the quarterback, not the coach, and not that I dislike those guys, but because of their running back, Todd Gurley. And it's very rare for a team to be playing the Falcons and for the most dynamic playmaker in the game to not be Julio Jones. But I think that's the case in this game with Todd Gurley. I want to put a little context on the season Gurley just finished up with. We know that this year he was the best running back in football. But historically, for guys with as many touches as he's had to average over 6 yards per touch, here's that list. Barry Sanders, O.J. Simpson, Marshall Faulk, the insane Chris Johnson year, and Todd Gurley this season.
Right. That's a minimum of 200 touches?
It is a minimum of 340 touches.
Oh, awesome.
It's high usage guys.
Awesome.
It's guys that have done it on a very high volume. So, and that's where Gurley is. When you go into this game as the Rams and you know we do have the highest scoring offense, we do have a nice complement of wide receivers. I don't know if you have one singular star wide receiver, but you have wide receivers you trust. We have a good quarterback, but at the end of the day, what we also have is a guy that we can hand the ball to 25 times, throw to another 6 to 8 times, and if he keeps up what he was doing the last month of the season, he's going to get us 150, 160 yards from scrimmage, put you at such an edge in this football
Todd Gurley has been amazing. But let's not forget last season, because Todd Gurley was playing with Jared Goff, who was a different player. They didn't have Sean McVay. They did not have Robert Woods. They did not have Sammy Watkins. And we watched the game, the pure numbers, the reason why, you can't stack the box against the Rams. Because if you do, they throw the ball outside. Now, to me, Sammy Watkins, the numbers don't indicate it, but he is the threat of a number 1 wide receiver. Sammy Watkins is only 24. This is his first playoff game. Sammy Watkins could be a huge difference maker in this game. And I believe that their wide receivers, Woods and Kupp, all these have not gotten enough credit. Todd Gurley, he is the table setter. But last year, what did he do by himself?
No, that's a great point.
All right? He was a normal football player. You had Sean McVay. You put Goff in his second year. The quartet of wide receivers, they lead to Gurley having the monster year that he had.
Okay, so talk to me how the Falcons' defense is going to just slow down this Rams powerhouse of an offense.
There's 3 things that they got to do. You got to put pressure on the quarterback. They haven't been as consistent in that area as they were last year. Adrian Claiborne had the one big game against Dallas. Since then, you haven't heard too much of the defense. Turnovers. They need to be able to get the turnover margin by at least 2. All right? So they have to try to create 3 turnovers to give Atlanta Falcons offense 2 extra possessions. And the Rams are going to move the ball. When they get to the plus 20, turnovers and red zone defense would be the 2 biggest stats you'll be able to look at when you after you're finished watching these games. They got to be able to make the Rams settle for 3 points compared to 7 points to give that offense a chance.
Based on the season they've just had, they should be optimistic about one, not the other. The Falcons have a top 5 red zone defense, but they have bottom 5 as far as forcing turnovers. They've been bad at that this year. Just one on the other matchup. I know we talk about Matt Ryan, and Julio Jones is maybe the best wide receiver in the league, certainly in the top 3. The Falcons this year, though, they're 10-1 when they run the ball 25-plus times. The running game was an enormous part of their success last season, and the Rams' defense, its biggest weakness, is stopping the run. They're bottom 5 in the NFL stopping the run. So their best path to victory might be through Devontae Freeman and Coleman. So that's just something to watch as well.
All right, again, we'll talk more about that. It is now time for your DraftKings Fantasy Preview, sponsored by DraftKings.com, where the fantasy season isn't over yet. All right, Nick, I want you to give us one player to watch from each game this weekend. We're going to start with the Titans and Chiefs.
Titans-Chiefs, I'm going with running back Kareem Hunt. He's giving you 120-plus yards per game over his last 3 full games. The Chiefs know that they absolutely have to go to Kareem Hunt, so Kareem Hunt's my pick for that game.
All right, let's move on. Falcons-Rams, Nick.
This one I'm going to go with Julio Jones. I needed a wide receiver. Julio, even if they are going to rely on the run, Julio's a tough matchup for any team. You would imagine that when things get bad for Atlanta, they're going to chuck it up to Julio. I like Julio Jones as one of the most expensive wide receivers on DraftKings this week.
Next up, Buffalo and Jacksonville.
All right, so it's not fun to just say take the Jags defense, so I wanted to find an offensive player from this game. So take a flyer on Leonard Fournette. I do not think they are going to let Blake Bortles throw the ball a lot. I know Fournette's a little gimpy, so maybe watch the injury report. But Leonard Fournette, I think, could get 30-plus carries in this game. High-volume pick with Leonard Fournette.
All right, last but not least, the Panthers and the Saints. Who do you like?
I know this will shock the audience. I know this is a bit of a curveball from me. But I'm going to go with Cameron Newton. I think Cam's going to have a big game. I think he has to have a big game, running and passing, for them to win, because he's a guy that can score with his legs, and that's always valuable in fantasy. I like Cam Newton in this game.
All right, apparently the theme on today's First Things First show is drama in Boston. We already talked about the Patriots. Here's how the Celtics are contributing. They were planning a video tribute for Isaiah Thomas on Wednesday when the Cavs were in town, but IT asked for the team to hold off until his next trip to Boston, when he'd actually be on the court playing, when his family would be there to watch. Well, the Cavs are back in town February 11th, the same day the team planned to retire Paul Pierce's jersey. So what, you ask? Well, Pierce doesn't want to share the limelight.
On February 11th, night I get my jersey retirement, I'm not sure I want to look up at the Jumbotron and see Isaiah highlights.
Bro,
after all the years I put in,
you don't need to share that with nobody.
You know, I had a chance to watch Kobe's, and throughout the game, the timeouts, it was a lot of tribute videos for him, and I enjoyed to watch that throughout the game. Now, hopefully, you know, the Boston Celtics will do that for me. I'm not sure if I want to see an Isaiah video that night.
Full disclosure, I didn't know this was happening until my phone started blowing up, and fumes were coming out, because when Nick is fired up about something, literally there's smoke that comes out of my phone.
Hold up. To quote Draymond Green, Paul, you ain't Kobe. They don't love you like Kobe. You ain't Kobe. That's an almost direct quote from Draymond Green.
Yeah, didn't he play for the Wizards and the Clippers?
And the Nets. Okay,
right?
Listen, Paul Pierce, you deserve to have your jersey retired. You are
a Celtics legend.
A Celtics legend. And as far as NBA history, you are somewhere from the 75th to 85th best player ever in the history of the world to do something. That is a hell of an accomplishment. But how you twist your mouth about to compare yourself to Kobe Bean Bryant is beyond me. And if you're going to be that petty to Isaiah Thomas, I'm going to return it with just, not even pettiness, just some facts. Because while Paul Pierce's career in Boston was far greater than Isaiah Thomas's career, the best season Paul Pierce ever had in Boston was not as good as the season Isaiah Thomas just had. Since Larry Bird retired, the Celtics have 2 top 5 MVP finishes, one by the guy that won Paul Pierce a ring in Kevin Garnett, and the other by the little guy, Isaiah Thomas. In their Celtics careers, even though Isaiah Thomas's was very short, they have the same number of first or second team All-NBA appearances. And the idea that you are going to have your night tarnished because for 90 seconds during a timeout, they would dare to pay a tribute to the best player on their team since the Big Three era, prior to Kyrie coming over, is an absurdity, and it's the level of petty I would think if you are, you would keep off of national television, Mr. Pierce.
And
but that's me.
I think that, you know, being involved in a ceremony like this, that you have to understand, too, that the Cavs are only coming back to Boston one more time. And because Isaiah wasn't there for game number 2, it's only right that the next time he comes back. Now, do they do it with some type of measure out of respect for Paul? Yes, I'm sure the Celtics are a classy organization. These two things can be done in the same night.
Of course.
But it just, you know, to me, I just hate grown men who are famous and rich, who are just petty about small things. And this is part of his pettiness, but it started back with my man Ray Allen. Now, if they were petty with Ray Allen, him, Rondo, and KG, one of my favorite players ever. I was there in Minnesota the day he was drafted, but spent many a times watching him develop. So this is an extension of Paul and his pettiness to Ray Allen. Like, let's grow up. Let's be adults. Let's realize that the world doesn't focus around you. And you being in Staples Center watching Kobe's retirement shouldn't even be part of the conversation as far as how your retirement will go in Boston. Because you, KG, and Ray Allen did resurrect Boston basketball. But also, when it died after you left, Isaiah Thomas resurrected Celtics
and that's just
basketball.
The way basketball is going to keep going. But why can't they just give Paul? I mean, Isaiah Thomas is there one night, February 11th. He's not. Why can't they give Paul Pierce another night?
Well, they before the season. They had already announced it before the season.
But I mean, to make everybody happy, I will just.
I don't want it to be a big game, though.
And I don't think Paul Pierce would be happy with the solution being
we're
he
bumping
changed his
your
night.
No.
He said you can do it next year. It's just.
Isaiah had a short career with the Celtics. And wait a second now. Let's not. The Celtics, if they wanted to do a tribute to him, they wouldn't have traded him. Okay?
Well, that's whether or not
so you can't have everything, all right? The Celtics, they want to honor Paul Pierce, and you just can't honor everyone. Danny Ainge decided he didn't want him.
Well, they did a tribute video to Jay Crowder, so they're going to do one to Isaiah Thomas.
That was a short.
But I just want to say one thing about the truth. I'm gonna speak some truth to the truth. You are delusional, bro. Like I saw him on the Uber video with Kerry Champion, where he said, he goes, yeah, you know, LeBron might not have those championships if he and I were the same age. You gotta chill, man. You're an all-time great. You're a Hall of Famer. But everyone seems to have Paul Pierce properly rated, except for Paul Pierce. And that is what led to, I saw what they did for Kobe.
Right.
Why can't they do that for me?
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.